A little while ago, Nintendo released Paper Mario Color Splash, the second entry in the Paper Mario Sticker Star franchise. The responses have been mixed, but I'm not here to talk about that today. I haven't played Color Splash, and I probably won't be in the near future. Instead, I want to talk about something that struck me as odd before the game was even released. The cards. Let's start with taking a journey back to the year 2012. It was a time when many feared for the end of the world, either through a Mayan apocalypse or through the release of Paper Mario Sticker Star. The latest entry in the Paper Mario franchise introduced a variety of changes to the formula, including a combat system based around consumable items, stickers. Now, ignoring the subjective quality of the implementation of these mechanics, within the context of the game, they made sense. When you think of stickers, you think of one-use disposable decorative items. Now, with that said, what do you think of when you think of cards? Probably things like building a deck, card games like poker, drawing hands, or maybe suits like spades and clubs. Why do cards in Color Splash work just like stickers in Sticker Star? In interviews, devs behind Color Splash talked about their desire to try something new with this game. Yet one of their core changes, replacing stickers with cards, went completely underutilized, serving only as a cosmetic change. Because of this, I started thinking about ways these could be used differently. I thought about card games, both digital and physical, and I ended up coming up with something a little interesting. So I decided to make this video. I have 3 core goals in this. First and foremost, I want to implement cards in a more substantial way, and I also want to think of something that would appeal more to classic Paper Mario fans. But at the same time, I don't want to betray the original vision that these devs had, nor do I think that my ideas are necessarily better than whatever they came up with. I'm just presenting what I think could be a cool alternative. And with that, let's get right into it. Let's start with the biggest change. In my alternate Color Splash, cards aren't consumable. As a result, cards will be a lot harder to come by, but each one you find will be a permanent addition to your arsenal. You'll also have to choose which cards in your collection are part of your deck. I thought a lot about what a good starting capacity would be for a deck, and ultimately decided it should be somewhere between 5 and 20, at least to start. There might need to be some other form of limitation, like a point cost to apply a card to a deck, so that you can prevent players from filling their decks with overpowered cards. But I also came up with another solution to that I'll talk about a bit later. Also, one of the most common problems that you run into with card-based video games is that the deck building is often too complicated or annoying for a lot of players, especially younger ones. To that end, there should probably be some sort of automatic deck building option, ideally with some presets, for example focusing on certain types of cards. There could even be an option to have your deck automatically update as you find more cards, replacing your cards with objectively superior ones as you find them. Accessibility is important after all. So when Mario enters a battle, he'll be given a hand of cards from his deck, chosen at random. Again, I'm not 100% sure how large a hand should be, probably somewhere between 5 and 10. Anyways, you can play up to 3 cards in the turn. Any remaining cards will stay in your hand, and each time your turn rolls around, your hand will be refilled back to its maximum capacity. This way you can save specific cards you might want to use later. Some of the people that I talked to about this immediately pointed out that this could lead to a problem where you don't have the cards you need in your hand at the time. As such, I came up with a somewhat hasty solution. Sticker Star and Color Splash both allow you to spend coins in battle for certain benefits. I'd replace that with the ability to shuffle out your hand for a small coin fee. Additionally, it would be done in a way that's weighted to give you different cards than what you had before. Now, using cards in sequence isn't something new. Both Color Splash and Sticker Star made use of that. In those games, using multiple cards caused them to be used in sequence, and that wouldn't be any different in my version. However, playing specific combinations of cards would allow you to use new techniques, sort of like having a certain hand in a normal card game. The most basic of these would be stacking 3 jump cards or 3 hammer cards. Use a single jump card in a turn and you'll cause Mario to jump on an enemy once. Twice if you use 2 cards, and 3 times if you use 3 cards. The more jumps Mario lands, the more damage he does. The hammer would have more of a straight up power boost. but stacking 2 hammers would cause a shockwave, giving the hammer area of effect damage. 3 stacked hammers would work somewhat like the Quake Hammer ability from the first 2 Paper Mario games, sending out a shockwave that dislodges enemies on the top of the screen, while flipping over and stunning enemies on the ground. But combining jumps and hammers are just the most basic thing you can do. You could use the jump card with a hammer card to do a hammer throw and hit airborne enemies. And by the same token, you could use a hammer card with a jump card to do a jump that can damage spiked enemies. Use a fire flower to give your attack fire attributes, and so on and so on. Now there's another mechanic in Color Splash that I haven't mentioned yet, and that's paint. In Color Splash you can paint a card to give it a power bonus, and the same core idea applies in my version as well. But the execution is a little different. For one, I always found it weird how the game did so little with individual colors. The game simply chooses the correct color to color something in for you automatically. Since cards are permanent now, coloring your card is also permanent. By consuming some of your paint reserves, you can color a card one of 3 colors: red, blue, or yellow. Each color provides a different benefit. Red is the most basic, it's a power boost, you'll do more damage with the card if it's colored red. Blue is a bit more technical, it's comparable to the badges from the first 2 Paper Mario games. A blue card gains a secondary ability. For example, a jump card could gain the Spike Shield ability, allowing that card to be used to damage spiked enemies with a jump attack. It could also potentially unlock the status effect ability in an elemental card, for example giving the Ice Flower the ability to freeze enemies. Finally, a yellow colored card would decrease recharge time. What's recharge time? It's my solution to avoid spam that I mentioned before. Every card will have a specific charge value. The higher the charge, the more turns you'll have to wait before you can use that card again. Basic hammers and jumps will have a charge of 1, so you have to wait 1 turn before it'll be shuffled back into your deck, allowing you to draw it again. The more powerful the card, the longer the wait. And this carries on between battles. A card that you've painted yellow will be able to get back into the action sooner. For example, a basic hammer or jump card that's been painted yellow will have a charge time of 0, meaning that as long as you have those yellow cards in your deck, you'll never have to worry about running out of cards. If it turns out that just having recharge time isn't enough to balance the cards, then some sort of limiting system like the badge points from the early Paper Marios will have to be implemented. Alternatively, more powerful cards could take up more slots in your deck. So for example, suppose you had a deck capacity of 10. You could put in one extremely powerful card that takes up 5 slots, or you could opt to put in 5 much weaker cards. I think this second system might be a bit easier for younger players to understand, which is Paper Mario's primary demographic. There's one last wrinkle to the cards, and that's mixing colors. This is something that I struggled with for a while. I couldn't think of 3 unique attributes for these 3 new colors. Then it hit me. The first 3 Paper Mario games had chefs that allowed you to combine 2 items to create hopefully a better new item. And that's what got me thinking that there could be some sort of card chef. In addition to making new cards like combining 2 older cards, you could also combine 2 of the same card with different colors in order to make a mixed color card. These cards would have 2 of the color abilities instead of just 1. So for example, a purple card would have increased damage and a special ability attached. I even considered the possibility of having black cards, created by combining all 3 colors. This would tie into the black paint that serves as the antagonist for the game. These cards would be extremely powerful, having the combined power of all 3 colors. However, when Mario uses one, he'll take damage. Speaking of taking damage and chefs, I never really figured out how healing items would fit into all of this. 2 ideas I had was to make things like mushrooms consumable items, but still take up a slot in your deck. Or to have them work just like any other card, but have extremely long recharge times. Next up I want to talk about something that's more or less new. Friend cards. Unfortunately this concept's a bit half-baked, helped in no small part by the fact that Color Splash doesn't have party members of any sort. What it does have is enemy cards. So just like every other card in this game, let's make them permanent. Now that's the easy part. How to use these cards is a bit of a problem. Sure, they could just be additions to your deck like anything else in the game, but I feel like the game's equivalent to party members should be something that Mario can access easily at any time. Maybe there could be some sort of secondary deck or some special method to get these cards straight into your hand. Whatever the case, these sorts of cards could give you access to all sorts of abilities from classic Paper Mario games. For example, let's suppose the basic Goomba card gives you access to the classic Tattle ability, letting you find out various things about your enemies. A basic level 1 Tattle will reveal your enemy's HP. At level 2 they reveal the types of attacks the enemy can use. And at level 3 they tell you about weaknesses that you can exploit to defeat this enemy more easily. On a slightly more Paper Mario note, each level of title could include more and more funny flavor text as well. You could also stack these friend cards with Mario's attacks for team-up abilities. For example, stack a Boo with a normal attack and it becomes a damage-piercing sneak attack. I feel like this addition could really expand the potential of the battle system, but how exactly to implement it? I'll have to get back to you on that. The final change to the combat system would be the concept of thing cards. In practice, in both games they were used to solve puzzles and beat bosses. I suggest dividing them up a bit. First of all, set up a smaller side deck of thing cards that can be used to solve puzzles. These cards aren't consumable, rather the puzzle involves finding a solution with the cards you have, possibly using different cards in conjunction with one another, and maybe cards that overlap could solve the puzzle but in a different way. This might be a bit much, but suppose that there's a part where Mario has to get past an ice block. You can use, let's say, a fire card, and this causes the ice to melt and flood the area. Alternatively, you could use an ice pick. This shatters the ice and causes ice blocks to fall down, creating some sort of maze. If that's too much, then just having cards that don't go away when used incorrectly would be pretty handy, I think. That said, in terms of boss battles, things would be very different. In Color Splash, thing cards are basically a flashy finisher for a boss fight. If you don't use or don't have the right card at the time, then the boss fight will literally just end. So in this new version, thing cards aren't needed for boss fights. However, now each boss fight will have special conditions that, when fulfilled, will give Mario the thing card. This card won't be needed to beat them, but beating them this way is not only instant, but will give you a special reward at the end, like some sort of special card or something. The remaining thing cards would simply be powerful but costly cards you could put in your deck. Outside of battle, another quirk of Sticker Star and Color Splash is their lack of experience points. Now in Color Splash, when you beat enemies, they'll drop hammers that increase your paint capacity, and being the boss of a world will increase your health. This new system of mine allows for another incentive: deck capacity. These could be gained from side quests, boss fights, or be found in hidden areas. The hammers that upgrade your paint capacity would be kept more or less the same, but there'd be a greater incentive to have a large paint capacity, since you'll be wanting to use that paint to upgrade your cards. This would be particularly true if powerful cards required more paint than you could hold by default. That said, in order to balance all this, any form of free paint refills would have to be completely removed. The final thing to talk about here is the Rochambeau temples. It's really weird to me that the game they chose to use their card gimmick was rock, paper, scissors. I think some sort of simple card game, maybe one that makes use of your in-game deck, would be much more fitting. That said, I can't really think of any kind of card game that would work, and if I can't think of something, it's not fair to ask someone else to think of it. Therefore, I came up with a plan B: make Rochambeau temples fighting arenas. You could even keep the rock, paper, scissors gimmick, only now winning gives you a benefit when you enter a battle, while failing causes you to have a penalty. Each arena could have a collection of enemies from the world that they're based in, and then end with a rematch against that world's Koopaling, possibly with increased stats or a new move or two. This has the added fringe benefit of allowing the player a second chance at exploiting the boss's thing card weakness, ensuring that they're never locked out of getting the special card reward for beating the boss this way. If they went the route of having the temples have more difficult battles, this would allow them to have some post-game content, as well as even more optional difficulty for experienced players. But that's about it. That's about as far as I can stretch this card gimmick. Keep in mind again that this is just an alternate suggestion. I'm no game development team, I just do this for fun. Besides, if Sticker Star is like Paper Mario 64, and Color Splash is like Thousand Year Door, then it only stands to reason that the next one will be like Super Paper Mario, completely and utterly different from the rest. And whether that's good or bad, it's the not knowing that makes it exciting. Thanks for watching. Feel free to leave a colorful or a dark comment below. If you want to see just how salty Paper Mario can make me, you can follow me at HatDogTalk on Twitter. And if you like this video, you should check out Paper Mario Staying Stagnant by Tanuki Tales. It really helps them out. With all that said, see you next time.